Hello and welcome back to the channel. Welcome to part 2 of this RPG systems tutorial. Last time, in case you didn't see, we covered this experience bar, so the XP scaling side of leveling up a character. And in this tutorial, we're going to be looking at this side bit here. So when we level up, all of our stats will increase in this nice kind of tick effect, and they'll increase semi-randomly. So we're going to create a weighted random. So it'll increase our character stats based on stats that they have an affinity for. So in this example, I have a little warrior dude here. He has low speed, he has high strength and endurance and high health. And now they aren't too big of a gap, but if we level up, we'll see speed is more likely to be a low number than a high number. Same with mana as well, I think. But sometimes it can be the max. In this situation, it's 10. If I go and just add in loads of level ups, you can start to see the difference. So speed is only increased by 107, while strength has increased there by 240 something. Okay. And what it's going to look like, what we're going to make all together is, I'm looking at my, if you want to go along with this and not in your own project, there is a Git link below. So download this project, and I have the two parts down here. So part 1 and then part 2 finished. Part 2 is basically everything going to be done. So you can just look at part 2 if you want. But basically, we're going to create a class system that contains some generic stats that I've just kind of hard typed in. It'll be whatever stats you want, a base value, and then we're going to use an animation curve like this to create that weighted random. So with our warrior, for example, the strength stat has a concaved stat. Sorry, hang on. Every time I open the graph, it opens in a wrong spot. We have this concaved graph, which means it's more likely to be kind of higher. So at 0.3, it's above 0.5, which means that it's more likely to give in that higher end of the stat range. And then I've inversed that with speed. So it's a convex curve, and it doesn't hit 0.5 until like 0.75. So it's very unlikely. There's only a 0.25 chance that it's going to get into this top range of stats, but it's still possible. So we're going to move really slow through this because there's quite a lot to get covered. So get yourself a cup of tea or water or something like that, and let's jump into it. All right. So I'm going to move over to the start here, which is basically where I finished up last tutorial with just the experience scaling. You don't need to do experience scaling, by the way, if you want to do this. All I'm really using the same as the level up button. The XP is like its own thing, so you don't need to worry about it. If you don't care about that, you don't need to worry about it. So stats on a character basically have two sides to the coin. First, we need to set up the base on what the on how kind of the character will develop. So basically a class, right? What is his level 1 stats, and what are his affinities? Okay. And then we need to do a second part of that then, which is basically we need to calculate out the stats based on our current level, and then those are like the active stats of the character, and the class is just the base stats of the character. I hope that makes sense. It will make sense by the end of this tutorial, I promise. And then we'll do those two sides, and then we'll do the nice UI thing to make it tick down as well. So let's jump in and let's get started with the character class. So we need basically two scripts for that right now. First, we need to understand what is a base stat, and then we're going to create a class that is basically a container for all the different stats that we want. Okay, so I'm going to create a C# script in here. I'm going to call that base stat, and let's open that up. And this is just a class, so it doesn't need to be a mono behavior. So we're going to get rid of the mono behavior base, and then this is just going to have two fields. So it's going to be a public int, and it's going to have its base value, so base stat value. And because this is going to be within a scriptable object, we want it to be visible within the inspector. So we have to actually add in a few extra bits here. So this has to be a serialized field. And up here, we need to make this serializable too. And then we need another serialized field, and it's going to be a public animation curve. And then we're going to call this base stat modifier. So we're going to use this animation curve to basically as a weighted random to understand how our character is going to progress. And that's all we need for that class. And then we need one more, and we're going to call this character class. So character class, you don't need to name a character class, really whatever you want it to be. Maybe your game doesn't have a class system. It could just be an entity based stats container, whatever you want. You know, it doesn't really matter. Let's open that up. And this is going to be a scriptable object. So scriptable object. Let's do all of these bits here. So we want it to be create asset menu. That's what we need. File name. Sometimes this autofills for me. I don't know why it's not autofilling for me right now. It's a bit the IntelliSense is quite inconsistent. Character class, menu, name, scriptable objects dash. So what this is doing is basically I'm sticking it into a folder within the menu, and character class. Okay. Just actually for the sake of me, I'm going to put new under this. You don't need to do this. This is just because I have the different parts. So the other character classes in the other parts are going to appear in the menu. So that's why I'm sticking a new one. You don't need to do that. And then a character class is basic container of base stats, and that's it. So have a list of what stats you want your game to be. You know, I'm going to do like the generic ones that like lots of games have. So a public base stat. So you probably definitely want health. And let's just copy that line a few times. And we'll do mana. We'll do speed, strength, and defense. Oh, no, we'll do intelligence. This is when you realize I don't know how to spell intelligence correctly. Intel. I think that's it. If it's not it, tell me in the comments. And that's a character class setup. Okay, so our entity is going to have a class, and then when we start up the game, we will access the class to then set our active stats. So we can do that really quickly just to kind of keep it all, so we're not just programming for a very long time. Let's give it a class. Public character class. I'll call it class. Oh, we can't call it class. So character class. Okay. And then over in Unity, let's do that. Let's set that up real quick. So I'm going to go to my scriptable objects folder. I'm going to right click. I'm going to go to create scriptable objects. Okay. I said scriptable objects instead of scriptable objects. I'm going to create a character class new. And let's name that. I'm going to name it warrior. Name it whatever you want. And I'm going to try to emulate what like a generic warrior would do here. So let's give everyone our base values. And you could technically hard code this. This isn't too important in the scheme of things. Imagine this as level 1 for your character. Maybe even level 0 technically. But just imagine that. And then we want to set graphs for our character based on if we think they're going to be strong in that area or not. So just to be generic and quick, I'm just going to use the default curve. But you know, you can obviously change this. If I want them to be really good at health, I could do that and mess with the curve as I like. And I'll leave that there. Who cares? And then mana, let's just like, we can make that like just a constant. Speed, we have bad speed. Strength, we have good strength. So we can see that. And then intelligence, we have bad intelligence. Bad intelligence. There we go. And you can see it. I don't know why it opens down there on the bottom of the screen like that. I'll have to figure out why that's happening. It's ruining my nice recording. And that's that. Now let's go to our character and let's apply our character class to that we just set up. Okay, and that's that bit. And now we need to read that and store it in our active character stats container. So we need to create an active stats container. What does that look like? And then basically make the two halves talk to each other within the entity class. Okay, What's going on down here? What's this red line I'm seeing? Error initializing output device. I don't think we care. I think that's okay. That's just Unity saying hello to us. Okay, so we need another class, and we're just going to call this stat as opposed to base stat. And this is going to look very similar to what we already have, but the caveat here would be that this is where you would add in kind of stat modifiers to what it is you're trying to do. So I might do that as a part 3 if you guys want to comment down below. So like, let me just actually just walk while I talk. This is a class, so we don't need the modifier. I just lost my train of thought. So basically, if you wanted to apply buffs and debuffs to a particular stat, that logic would probably go in here somewhere, some kind of apply stat modifier to your active stat and not in the base stat, because that's a scriptable object. We don't want to change that. We just want to change this one, which is going to be our active thing. So if you want me to add on to this, let me know. Let me know, and I will. And for the sake of the UI, before we get jump into the stat, I'm actually going to create an enum. So I should probably just create this in its own. You should create this in its own file, but I'm lazy, so I'm not going to do that. So we're going to do a public enum. I'm going to call that stats or stat keys, maybe. And it's basically everything we just did in the base, in the character class. We're just going to stick that here in the enum. So what we used: health, mana, speed, strength, and intelligence. Okay. And now let's actually change our stat so we can get rid of all of this. And so it wants a stat key. So basically the UI is going to have its stat key, and it's going to read all of the stats and their keys, and it's going to pair them up really nicely, which is just my way of doing it. There's probably other ways, but this is my strategy for doing it. So I need a public, typing in the wrong place, public stat key. I'm going to call this stat key. And then we just want a public stat, no, public int. I'm going to call this stat value. We fix that casing so we're all consistent. And then I just want a constructor, public stat. I'm going to stat key and the stat value. And that's okay. And then, so just to kind of maybe give you a little bit of a tease on if you wanted to expand on this, because that's really the power of having a separate class for this, is that you would have like a base stat value and then a modifier or something, and then those things would be in here, and then you'd have a class or a method that would change the stat value and all this kind of good stuff. So if you want to see that in another part, let me know. Not everyone cares about modifying stats and buffs and stuff, so I'm not going to do it for this part, but if you want to see more, let me know. And next up, I need to create stats container then for those stats. So another script, I'm going to call this stats container. And this is going to look very similar to the character class, okay? But it's hard to explain it because I'm not going to do it in the tutorial. But this is basically what you're going to be serializing when you save a game or save your character. Serializing is a whole lot of kettle of fish, and there's lots of ways to do it. So I'm not going to cover it here, but basically this element of a character will be serialized when you save, and you will, and then the idea would be on start or on load, you would search for characters stat container or generate a new one. We're only going to be generating every time we press play, but keep that in mind for this bit. Okay, so I'm basically going to take this and I'm going to copy it into here. It does not need to be a mono behavior, and we're going to get rid of it. Just like that. And I'm just going to create a very quick little constructor. So public stat container. But I'm not going to set any of the stats yet. I'm just going to let that be, and then we're going to set it within the entity class on start. And that is that bit. Next up, it is time to go into our entity and actually have both halves of this puzzle talk to each other. And then after that, we'll do the UI. So let's go to our entity class. And I've already kind of laid out the methods we're going to need. So we're going to have 3 methods. We're going to have set stats, level up stats, and then a get stat method. So first, let's focus on set stats, which is basically going to be our initializer when we first start the game. So first, we need our stats container. So we're going to do a public stats container, and even though this is public, we don't want it to be in the inspector. So I'm going to actually wrap that in a hide in inspector, because we aren't setting this outside of the character. And then let's go to our set stats method. I'm going to do an if stats container equals null. We're going to initialize it. Okay, so stats container equals new stats container. And this is where we're going to kind of set it based on our class. Technically, now that I'm thinking about it, we could just give the container the class, and that would work also, which I'm thinking I might do. Yeah, so we're making changes on the fly here because this makes more sense. So this is a character class, and we're going to set the stats within the constructor because that's what we should be doing anyway. And let's get rid of this line. And here we're going to give that character class. Awesome. And then stats container, let me copy that line in there. The health equals new stat. And that is going to be, we're going to give it its stats key dot health. And then character class health dot base stat. Okay. I'll do it like that. And then I'm going to copy that a few times and just change these from mana, give them to the correct names. And that's done. So there is our stats container getting set up correctly, initialized correctly. And then after we initialize our container, we want to basically scale it up to match our current level. So we're going to do a for loop here. And the length is going to be level of our character, the current level of our character. And then we're going to call the level up stats method. So now we're going to set up our level up stats method, and this is going to now use the weighted random that we talked about with the animation curve, and then just apply it to our stat value of our stat. So this is going to be quite a long line, each of these. So I'm just going to write it out. We're just going to do example of one of them, and then I'll explain it, and then we'll do all of the stats after that. Okay. So first I need a random, so float. I need a random value between 0 and 1. Float equals, and you do that with random dot range, and that is 0f 1f. Okay, and then we're going to set our health stat. So let's do stats container. That's not it. Stats container dot health stat value equals plus equals itself plus mat f dot round to int. You don't have to round it. You could seal this or floor it if you want, whatever you want to do. And then we want to evaluate our animation curve based on the random range that we just have. So it is character class dot, we're using health, so that's health. I think there probably is a fancier way to like just loop through, do this with a loop instead of the way I'm doing it, but I think this is more readable in my opinion. But you know, feel free to question that if you want. There probably is a way to just loop through all the fields the same way I did within the container. And we're going to evaluate v, and then we want to multiply that by the maximum increase. So in my example, I just had 10. We could hard set that somewhere if you want. It could even maybe be within this character class or in the base stat, like what is the maximum increase for each base stat individually if there is a difference. But I'm just gonna set them all to 10 because it means I think it helps with balancing when every stat is increasing by the same amount, and you don't have one that's increasing by 10 or something like that. So let's actually create an int for that. Int max increase equals 10 max increase. Okay, so what this line is doing is basically we are getting a value between 0 and 1, and then we evaluate the animation curve, and that'll give us a value based on on this value, right? So I think it's best if I go back and open it up and give you a real example. So if I go to our warrior class and let's just open up strength. So let's argue that our random was 0.4. It's going to go up and give us something like, we round it. So it's going to give us something like 0.6, which is probably, yeah, it's probably going to give us like 0.6. Multiply that by 10, our stat just increased by 6, even though it only gave us a 4 here. Okay, does that make sense? That's basically what's happening in the line there. And now I need to copy this line basically for every other stat. We get rid of the floats because we want a fresh random for each individual stat, right? That is that bit done. There is actually one extra step that it's not necessary for the tutorial, but I forgot about, and that is with health and mana, because these are, as opposed to the other three, are kind of resources within a level, right? Your health and your mana is a resource. We kind of wanted to have the stat to have a current version of that as well. So I'm going to add that in. So down here, actually, I'm going to do current health and current mana, and that's not even going to appear in the UI because we don't care about that, but it's just for yourself so you can actually set it up nicely. And then we want to add that to our stats container as well. I'm just going to copy and paste that, and let's just type in current mana, current health. Okay, I'm going to flip them so they match, and here let's instantiate them, current health, current mana, but we don't need that. Current health, current mana, but we don't need the character class to have a current. It will just be mana or health and mana, and that's that. Okay, and then back in our entity, I want to do, we want to set our current healths and mana's values, but we don't want to that be random because it's not. It just equals health. So that just equals this. Okay. So now your character has its current health and its current. It probably doesn't even need to be within the stats container. You could just have it within the entity if you want as well. You know, whatever you want to do. Current mana. And that is that for leveling up our stats. Now we don't have a way to visualize this now, so I can't really show you how it works, but trust me, we're going to do the UI bit now in a sec. The last method we need to do is get stat, which the UI is going to call, which is just a switch. So we're going to do a switch, stat name, and autofill for me. It didn't autofill. There we go. That's an autofill for you. I upgraded Visual Studio, and ever since the IntelliSense has kind of been fighting with me, and it's a bit annoying. So yeah, 2022 is not fantastic, I don't think. But these just return our stats like this. Okay, that's all we care about there. And give it that break. This is incorrect. That's stat keys. So what's after happening to me there is it's using the other versions from part 1 and part 2. So don't stress too much about that. I'll fix that now. Speed. Okay. So that's what the get stat method looks like. Just a switch, and it's just getting based on what key we give it. It'll give us back the stat value that we want. So yeah, nothing too crazy going on now. And now everything's done. We just need to do some UI so we can actually look at it. So let's do the UI bit, and then we'll be finished. So this is kind of how I've done it for this scene. There's obviously lots of different ways to do something like this, whatever way you want to visualize your stats and figure out, just do it, or just copy me. So we need a new script. I want to put it in the wrong place. I'll fix that in a second. And this script will be our stat reader. Let me just drag, make sure it is in the scripts folder for cleanliness. Stat reader. And this script has a lot going on. So I want to give it access to our character manager, our entity, sorry, character. I wanted to give it a public, it's stat, so stat keys, stat key. It needs to have its own text component. That's basically what we're going to be editing. So private text, stat text. The difference public text. Why stop autofilling? Holy moly. The difference text. So that is basically the increase. Obviously, we want to import the UI piece for that as well. And we want a few ints here as well. So we want a private int current value. And we want a private int current level. Jesus. And the reason for these is that we are going to be comparing if basically the value or the level of the character changes within our update loop. So let's set up a start and get all this instantiated correctly. So start text equals our game object dot get component text. We want to get our current stat, so we're going to do stat equals character dot get stat with our stats key. And we want to set our current value and our current level. So that's just going to be current value equals stat value. Our current level equals character current, not current level, dot start level. And then we want to set the text for our stat text. Stat text dot text equals stat key dot toString plus, I'm just going to make it look nice, plus stat dot stat value, like that. There's our start done. Now we want a new method for updating our text. So this could be in the update, to be honest. But I like having methods separately for whatever reason. But anyway, public void update text. That's not what I typed in. Unity, come on. Update text. And before we update text, we want to be able to confirm that something has actually changed. So if current level does not equal character dot level, we're going to update everything. So current level now is going to equal character level. We want to get the stat. So stat equals character, what on earth? Character dot get stats key. We want to get it again. We want to calculate the difference. So difference equals, and that is going to be our stat value minus current value. Okay. And then we want an if to check that difference, and we're going to basically set up text then because of that. So if difference is greater than 0, we're going to set up our difference text. So difference text dot text equals, and we're just going to do a little plus here, not a single, let's do a plus, let's not do a space, I'm not sure, and a difference. Okay, and because this is a positive increase, we're going to change the color, because why not? Difference dot color, difference text dot color equals new color. I'm just going to make it green. So that is going to be 0 for the R, 255 for the green, and 0 for the blue, and then 255 for the alpha. And then finally, we are going to start a coroutine for that. Start coroutine. I'll write the coroutine in a second once I do the else bit of this. Else, I'm going to copy these 2 lines, and in here, let's change this to red. So it's going to be, the color is going to be red, 225 and 0. And I suppose technically, let's just do this for fun. I haven't done this myself actually, but just for a bit of fun. If difference is less than 0, I'm going to set you to minus. That's going to start another coroutine. So we're going to write another coroutine after this. And then else, just to make it look as nice as possible, let's copy these 2 lines again. And this is going to be the same, except we're just going to get rid of the minus because that means it's means it's a 0. And let's take a start to string on this bad boy. And there, that's that bit done. And now we're going to write 2 coroutines, one for ticking the text ticking down and one for ticking up. Okay. So let me just fix this a bit. So we're going to call this public I enumerator tick text up. And this is going to create that little animation that we had for the text increasing over time. So we're going to yield. We're going to wait for a second. So we're going to pause for just like 1 second. Wait for seconds. 1f. That needs a new 1f. So wait 1 second. And then we're going to do while. Oh, also, we want to be giving it the difference. Int difference. And then while difference is greater than 1. Greater than 0, sorry. We are going to do difference minus minus. Current value. We're going to increase our current value plus plus. And now we want to set our text. So difference text. We need to update it. So difference text equals, that is incorrect. So it's going to be plus, and this is difference, not current value. Good job, IntelliSense. And then we want to update our stat text to be correct. Stat text dot text equals stat key dot toString plus, what did we have earlier? We had this current value. Okay. And then we want to wait in between that as well. So we're going to do another yield, wait for seconds. Feel free to mess with these numbers as much as you want. It doesn't really matter. This is just kind of style points more than anything else. Let's set it at 0.1 so it ticks down. You can actually see the tick. And then after the while loop, wow, stat, oh, we'll say stat character equals character get stat key. Basically, we want to reset our values now. So we want our default stat text now to equal just a blank string. And do I need to set the set text? I don't think I do. I think that's all I need. I might regret that, but we'll see. I think that's all we need for now. And then let's copy and paste that method. And let's do the opposite. Let's do tick down. And we're just going to flip. We just flip the script here on this. So we're just going to do plus plus here. Minus minus on the current value. Stick a minus here. And while difference is less than 0. And I think that is it. And now we just got to call those coroutines. So start coroutine tick text up with difference, that, and then in the other two, I think we'll do tick text up for the 0 as well. So there's a plus symbol instead of a minus, and then this is going to be down, text down. Okay, code is done. That should be everything we need to do code wise. Super fantastic. Lastly, now we need to set it all up on the inspector. So over here, this should be relatively quick. What have I missed? This needs to be a double quotes. That's that. Okay. So in the inspector, and we have a bunch of other stuff. I don't think we care. Okay, I don't think we care about those warnings. So I'm going to try to make this as quick as possible and make it look nice. So we want to create a container. So this is going to be our stats container where we're going to put all the text. Stat container. Okay. And the stats container is going to contain a stat empty object. And that is going to contain 2 texts. So we have our stat text and our diff text. Let's just turn off the white and increase it a little bit so it looks a bit nicer. Same with the div text. I know they're overlapping at the minute. 20, doesn't matter. And we're going to lay this out nicely with a horizontal layer group. The start is going to have a vertical, or maybe strong way around. This is has a horizontal layer group. Horizontal layer group. I'm just going to duplicate that real quick. Give the starts container a vertical layer group. And now let's position that nicely. So let's just drag it over here. Like so. Move it up a little bit. I want to reduce that spacing there and reduce the spacing here as well. Like that. Awesome. Get rid of that as well. I'm just going to change this to placeholder 100. And the div text is going to be +1. And now I can change the spacing a little bit again, like that. That should be good enough, I think. First to 0. Yeah, I think that's probably okay. And I think then on our stat text, I am going to give it the stat reader component that we created. Well, this is going to be health. We give it its canvas and we give it its div text. Okay. And let's press play and see what happens. Nothing. That's not good. So the reason that error happened was a little mistake. It was a raise condition. So a reader needs access to the stats container and it's getting initialized on start, which means the stats container needs to exist before start happens. So we got to switch this to awake. Really common mistake. Another very important step I've forgotten is we need to call the level up stats when we level up. I'm only doing it in the initial, not at the level up. So wherever my level up method is in here, I'm going to call level up stats, which I forgot about. And lastly, the other important thing that I forgot is I need to call the update text method within the update. Yeah, if I press start, health is correct and it will start ticking. Awesome. So now that that's working, all I need to do is let's just remove this +1 and then let's just duplicate this 5 times. We could make this a prefab as well. I'm not going to bother. I'm going to set it to, we're going to set all of our stats to the correct stat key. And that should be it. So if I press play, we have all of our bits right in level up. We see a tick correctly. Oh, one thing I forgot. So what's happening here is basically lots of coroutines are happening at the same time. So we have one line of code to add in update text. Before we do any of this, we want to stop all coroutines. So basically, when we update, before we start ticking, we're going to reset the coroutines so that it's always fresh. So now, if I go in and it'll increase nicely like that. And that's it. That's the tutorial done. I'm also just going to quickly test the tick down because I haven't done that. And the way I'm going to test the tick down is by going into speed. Let me fix this bad boy. And I'm just going to make it possible that it can be negative. Okay, let's make it really extreme. I don't even know where it is. Yeah, okay. Let's press play. And I'm going to do this. -6. And it worked. Yeah, it did work. Awesome. There's 2 minuses there, but that's fine. We don't care too much about that. I'm not too stressed about that. Yeah, there's 2 minuses there, but who cares? That's it. That's it. Tutorial is done. That was a long one. I hope I didn't ramble too much and it made sense. I know there was a lot of different bits and a lot of different kind of confusing points, but that's how I've done it. And I hope you found it helpful and I hope it was good. And that's it. Yeah, so check out Tactics Toolkit. Make sure you join the Discord if you enjoy it, subscribe and like and all that other good stuff. And I'll see you guys next time. Cheers. Thank you so much for making it to the end. Cheers.